Awesome. Yeah, so quick introductions. As Scott said, my name is Joe Wesch. I'm a managing consultant with Network to Code. I've been with them for 4 years. I've been automating for 7 years, all in all. And I've been working with Aaron Drydale, who's a senior solutions architect for almost 3 years now. And we're just going to kind of cover all the things that we've learned and we've automated in their networks. I'm not going to take too much more time. I'm going to hand it over to Aaron for the overview of the company and some of the project history.
Awesome. Green button?
The green button, yeah.
Okay. All right, so QuikTrip, we're a convenience store. We operate over 1,100 store locations across the US. Last fiscal year alone, we opened up over 80 new sites, and there's all kinds of complications to go with that. If you asked me 10 years ago if I'd be presenting at a network automation conference, I'd say you're crazy. We sell gasoline, Snickers bars, and coffee. But there's actually a lot of tech that goes behind selling you a Snickers bar. There's a growing technology footprint along with our growing store count. So we're being asked, how do we do more with less? Not that we're going to reduce our staffing, but that we're going to, we won't grow our staff as fast as we're growing our stores. So how do we do that? We're going to focus on enablement. This is mainly for our frontline IT workers, but it does extend to some other non-IT groups. We want to free up our next tiers of support and engineering so they can do better things to grow the company. When we enable all these individuals to do complex tasks, we want to make sure that we understand the state of a store, so pre and post, and we want to make sure that after a task is done, the site is in better state or at least as healthy as it was prior. Then finally, we have two core things to any automation. I want to do it fast, and I want to do it better than any human can do it. So quick history of where we've been. 2014, we started some internal efforts. We developed a visibility page in C# ASP.NET, and this expanded over the years to a couple of other independent tools, but we knew this wasn't going to scale. This is all managed, maintained by a single individual, myself, and I don't want to be doing that for the rest of my career. So in 2017, we engaged Network to Code for a partnership, and we stood up an Ansible environment, and we started doing the standard things of configuration, source of truth, and configuration management. However, we ran into some cultural struggles that we didn't really foresee, mainly from the adoption and management of our in-field equipment. Fast forward in 2021, we had a hardware refresh event come up. This was all of our router switches and access points in our stores. And we took that opportunity to say, we've done this, we have these two separate systems side by side doing things. How can we do it better? So we decided we're going to deploy Nautobot. Very early version, 103, and then we also decided to switch to pure Python. So we tore down our Ansible environment and did everything straight in Python. Worked better for our team. And this automation effort was quite a big success, in my opinion. It ranged from everything from build to install, and we had all kinds of validations in between. But we did run into some struggles. About 5% of our stores in. At that point in 2021, we had about 900 stores. So 45 stores in, we knew that we were leaving the store and causing things to be down after the fact. So we added more state checks. We took an entire snapshot of the store from a network perspective, and then we compared that pre and post, and we informed the on-site techs of what was down so they could fix that before they left. Now during this effort, we're still building new stores. So we had all this automation we built for the refresh. We were able to bundle that up, put it into easy buttons, and now we have a non-IT group provisioning, building, and validating the entire IT stack for a store before it goes out the door. And also on the next part, it says automated migrations. Scratch that, reverse it. We migrated our automations from our legacy systems. Now the fun part here is that in this hardware refresh, we deployed Citrix SD-WAN. And if anyone in the crowd is aware, they were acquired by our venture capital, and in October of 2022, they decided to end of life the entire platform in 2025. So we just deployed this to all of our stores, so we got to do it all over again. So we did another hardware refresh. Thankfully, we had all this code. We were able to swap out some components and move along, and we've already completed that refresh. And with that, I'll hand it back to Joe, and he'll talk about some of the methodologies.
Thank you, Aaron. So Aaron discussed what we did. I'm going to kind of go over why we did it, how we did it. I'm calling this design-driven automation. I don't really know the exact definition of that, but for us, it means taking the workflows that already existed, by the QuikTrip engineers and architects, and building our automation around that instead of trying to come in with something fresh. Also, a very consistent and reliable process going through, as well as being modular and idempotent. So we'll talk about these three things here throughout the next few slides, but essentially this is how we designed everything going forward. So that way we would try and learn from our mistakes. So here's just a few of our vendors that we've integrated with. This isn't an exhaustive list, but we knew right away we were going to have some challenges for the various different systems that QuikTrip employs, as well as some homegrown APIs that they have. And then the other challenge that we had was they're very geographically diverse or dispersed. They're all over the nation. So we needed to be the eyes and ears for those techs. We don't know, we're not going to have the same tech go to obviously every one of the stores. So we need to have everything centralized into one place. The other thing is the audit logs. We were very big on trying to kind of correlate things together. And so I'll talk a little bit about that as well in the future, but that in a unified interface helps us kind of go forward and make sure that we're not missing things as we go. I think that's everything I wanted to talk on here. So there's 4 key features that I wanted to point out of our automation. First one is we wanted to have the lifecycle be all automated. So that is the full stack refresh that Aaron mentioned. That's the install, decommission, upgrade for the entire thing. It's all automated. That way we keep the same standards across all of their stores. Also, we wanted to employ idempotency because as I stated, we started with their process and automated around it. So we weren't the first ones to go in. We weren't doing the greenfield. We were automating what they did. So we had some pilot stores that we had to go back, and maybe we iterated. Maybe we learned some some things that we needed to change. We would be able to rerun the same automation across them and bring them up to speed. Next, integrating with those external systems that I mentioned. There was a lot of them, and we had to make sure that we weren't interrupting their flow, as well as being able to glean as much information as we could, so that way everything was in the same spot, so we could learn as we go. Sorry. Yes. Then that turned into day 2. Day 2 operations was big as we were going forward. After we've installed all the stores, we've upgraded all them all. Now we have to think about, okay, what's next? What's going to come along? We're going to have Meraki APs and switches need to be swapped out. And so we created a whole system where we took minimal inputs from the end user to be able to maximize our automation. Essentially, is it an AP or a switch? Are you adding, removing, or replacing? That's it, and then give me the serial number and we're off to the races. All right. The last one there, one-click complex network changes. If you're not aware of QuikTrip refreshes their stores from time to time. Sometimes it's in place, but sometimes it makes sense to just build another store, sometimes down the street, sometimes across town. And both stores need to be up at one time. So we have a staging store and a production store, and at one night we need to flop all the IP subnets around, and so we automated that as much as we could, so that way it's a seamless integration throughout the whole process. I also have on there Palo OS upgrades. If anyone's done an OS upgrade on a Palo 220, you know it takes forever, and we had to do a lot of them, and so we kicked that off to a Celery asynchronous worker and let it do the work. We created the pipeline so it knew when to restart, what to restart, and move forward. Lastly, we were using Nautobot as the source of truth. So everything that we were building, if we didn't want to ask the user the questions, we wanted to go figure it out. So we integrated with those external systems to pull in the information, house it in Nautobot, and then move forward, going forward from there. The other thing that we did, I don't think I have it on the slides here, but our process was a very static process as we went. We created stages for all of their jobs, so that way when they were moving forward, they knew that they would go through stage 1, then stage 2, and stage 3, and we built in logic gates to make sure that they couldn't skip a stage, as well as we had the validations from the previous stage to make sure that they had to pass before we get to the next stage. This ensured that the store was in a good state going forward before we went to the next stage prematurely. This also helped, again, back to the eyes and ears of those on-site techs. Maybe they don't necessarily know what the state is. They think it's good, but maybe the light's on, but we don't have communication. So next, the other challenge and kind of thing we went through is consolidated visibility. Let me take some water. I'm getting dry. Denver weather. All right. So going from on-premise Cisco devices to cloud, specifically the Meraki and Citrix, we went from CLI to GUI, right? A lot of systems, we lost that ability to connect to them and see them. And when you introduce new systems, each vendor has their own layout and their own way to introduce things. They call them different things. So we wanted to consolidate all into one view. This allowed us to get rid of the noise, if you will, and also we didn't have to worry about all the different RBAC controls. Sometimes you don't necessarily have the controls to lock down the systems. So this is how we kind of consolidated that. The top right and the bottom left are kind of two sides of the same coin, but they go together. Primarily, we're trying to remove the buttons that we don't want them to push, right? We want to remove the stuff that we don't need them to work on. Whenever you logged into the system, I'm sure you've gone in there and you've like, oh, what's that? And you can start clicking around and start wandering. We didn't want that, but also cut out the noise, right? So the bottom left, you can see we did a lot of work to make sure that when they're in a break-fix scenario where a store may be down, we give them just the visibility they need into the single switch, into just the buttons they need to be able to hone in on what they're doing. This helped remove that noise, and it kept them focused, as well as you can see in the bottom right, we tried to give other views to other parts of the organization as well. We had a read-only view, so a non-technical person could come in, be able to see things, and they can get a good snapshot of the network as it was, and also empower our tier 1, tier 2 technicians without letting them take something down. So we gave them, for example, we gave them a button to cycle ports, but we disabled the button on the uplinks, right? So they can't take a whole network stack down. And I think that's it for me, Aaron.
All right, so what have we learned? We've talked about who we are, what we've done, and how we did it, but we learned a lot of things along the way. So modular components is probably one of the bigger ones. Again, your hardware is going to change, be it a platform, a model, or even between vendors. And even beyond that, you have other supporting systems that will change as well. Monitoring, AAA, IPAM, et cetera. Those will change. So you need to make sure you can modularize that as much as possible so that when that change happens, you can more quickly adapt. You're not editing the entire code base. Data sources such as IPAM. So this is super critical for us and one of our earlier automations that we've now migrated into Nautobot as a data source. As an automated system. We use InfoBlox, and it has all of our store information in there. And once you get your data sources automated and solid, it is so easy to reuse those in all your subsequent automations. So getting that right early is very important. Target user. Again, we failed, or at least not succeeded in the ways we thought we would on various automations. QuikTrip is a big company, 1,100 sites, 35,000 employees, but we only have 5 network engineers and about 10 NOC. So we need to be able to enable our non-technical, or at least non-network users to do things and provide the right guardrails for that. And along with providing them with the guardrails, we need to be able to give them it in a consumable way so it's quick and easy for them to use. We want to make it the easiest way possible for them to do it so they want to use the automation while maintaining health. Where are we going from here? So QuikTrip's going to keep opening stores. We have, like I said, we opened 80 last fiscal year. We're going to improve that year over year. And we need to do more with less. Again, our staff is not going to scale at that same rate. We're going to continue to build more automations, do cool things, and we have other active efforts right now, like migrating our data centers to infrastructure as code and a growing cloud footprint. On the Nautobot side, we're going to continue to enhance it as a data source and an automation platform. We're going to get all of our rack elevations in there. This has been a gap for us historically, and we're starting to get our data centers and et cetera in there. Power feeds is another one we're going to integrate. We've had issues relatively recently where we have gone over on power. We didn't know it, so we're going to get that visibility. And finally, oh, by the way, on top of our 1,100 store sites, we have over 60 corporate locations that are supporting our stores in various ways, from a facility sports shop, repairing things, to division offices, managing personnel, and to distribution sites. So we want to get all that information into Nautobot and make sure we're ready to automate there when we need to. So to wrap it up, we're here to automate. We know the benefits, but you want to give your people back time to better, more interesting things. Don't limit it just to IT. There are other groups in your companies that I'm sure that would benefit from your automations, even if it's just from a light level. You want to reduce human errors, and we have to do more with less. And one thing that we've tried at QT is to track. So obviously, up front, you track, and you say, oh, it's going to take me this long to do this task, and if I automate it, it's going to take minutes. That's great at the beginning, but you want to track that through the lifespan. Prove that value out. So that when you want to do subsequent automations, it's easier to get backing to put the time and money towards it. The example that Joe gave you about the push button to cycle a port, that was a process that used to take our in-field techs minutes, which doesn't sound like a lot, but across 11,000 stores, it adds up. And if we reduce that down to 10 seconds, we can literally save 40 work hours a week over 2 months. And if you haven't, start small, show the benefit savings. Start today, document your automation goals, the classic find repeated efforts in tickets, configuration, troubleshooting, etc. And as the old quote goes, the best time to start was yesterday, but the second best time to start is now. And that's it for us. Thank you all so much for your time. Are there any questions? Yes? Yes. Yeah, that's actually a good question. So,
repeat the question.
Oh, sorry. The question is, did we have budget to start these efforts, right? In the beginning, no. I was a young kid and I had a bunch of time, so I did most of these on my off time. But once we got to that point where we were proving value, it was so much easier to get buy-in from our executives. We have a lot of executive support in place now, but in the beginning, it was difficult. You really just have to start and get that going. Yeah, how do we give the value? So again, we had a bunch of tooling, custom made in C#, from visibility to allocation of our DDI stack, DNS, DHCP, and IPAM. And we were able to say it used to take us an hour to do these tasks, and there were errors, and it took this much time to fix it, and now it's a button, and it is nearly guaranteed to work every single time. So that was one of our bigger wins, and that's one of my favorites. That gave us a lot of support. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're using Ansible, we're using Tower automation platform, or just Ansible?
Yeah, we were using, I think it was AWX.
Yep.
I'm sorry. When we were using Ansible, we were using Tower or another management platform. Yeah, we were using AWX for orchestration, and it worked well. But again, the interface that we were provided wasn't conducive to some of our individuals in the organization, and we weren't providing the right things that they needed. So that's what got us into crafting more custom views.
I got one over here. You mentioned the challenge of having 2 locations in the same city or part, right, where you had the challenge to migrate them in minutes. Why wouldn't you choose to just build up the second one and treat it as a new one and just take down the other?
Very good question. So the question is, we have relocations where we build the same store in a different location, literally sometimes feet behind the other store. That's more related to business processes, not IT. We would have loved to just wipe and recreate it, but there are some deeper things tied to some of the things that we do with our stores that mandated we actually move the entire store. Yes?
On the consolidated visibility slide, you talked about guardrails and making certain buttons visible. Can you go a little bit more into what that actually
Yeah, so on the question was on the consolidated visibility, we talked about only exposing the certain buttons that we wanted to the right people. Again, I kind of alluded to this, but essentially we want them to be able to do their job, but not take down a store. So we gave them the ability to cycle a port, for example. We gave them the ability to go into visibility into things where it would normally take a long time. Specifically, like if they're looking for a MAC address on multiple firewalls, we gave them a portal to go through and log into all the firewalls, all the Palo Altos, and display that information. So it's more of a way of empowering them, but not giving them access to the entire system all at one go.
So was that a separate system that was put on top of it, or was that custom?
Yeah, at least that was a custom view that we created for them, that we gave them. Yeah, exactly, built in Django.
Yeah, and I think one of the bigger things there was like the Meraki stuff, automating replacement of switches, automating cycling ports, getting our frontline workers out of the Meraki dashboard. One of our bigger problems early on was that the dashboard doesn't really have great fine-grained access controls. And we had one of our individuals in our service center. Our service center is hired directly from our store, so they don't necessarily have an IT background. One of them went in there and like, oh, this switch needs an upgrade. I'm going to upgrade the switch. Well, that's great, but our switches are tied to a template. Anytime you change that template, it upgrades every single switch tied to it. So they upgrade an entire division of our stores, which takes a reboot of the switch. So guardrails are incredibly important for us.
When you had all your tasks that you wanted to automate in front of you, how did you prioritize which ones to start with first?
The tests?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
How did you prioritize which tasks to prioritize when you were looking at automating them?
Great question. So how do we prioritize our tasks? Really, it was starting with that enablement. Who is the most common denominator? We can have our network engineers do all these tasks. We can have our NOC do all these tasks. But if there's something easy that we can give our stores back, their time, that's super important for us. So creating a single button, creating a replacement process, creating something that enables them to do other things without having to reach out to us so we can do bigger and better things. Really, it's that. Any other questions?
Got one in the back.
Oh, I think we got one over here.
Oh, here.
Early on in the talk, you mentioned challenges with executive buy-in or buy-in of these solutions. Could you give us an example of a tipping point where it went from skepticism to support?
Yep. So, politically correct way to say that, we had some changes in guard. But we had people who were directly seeing the things that we were doing, and we had them move up, and we've continued to be able to produce value there. And again, tracking how much time we're saving, and to show them that if we do this, we're going to save the company X number of hours or dollars or whatnot. Really, getting the executive buy-in is all about proving. Some of them are stuck in the old ways, but we're working through that.
Yeah, I think it also helped when we could show that one person could do multiple jobs at once. By kicking off all the things to asynchronous jobs, we could multiplex them and they could do parallel work at one time. So we didn't have to have multiple people watching a store and kind of babysitting it. It was all done asynchronously. And so we could, by keeping those logic gates from the stages, they didn't lose place where they were and accidentally run a stage multiple times. And so that helped to kind of show that we could do more with less, as Aaron had mentioned.
Yeah, and that is a mandate from our leadership. Again, we're not going to grow staffing. So if they say do more with less, we say this is how we do it.
So when you guys are running the jobs in Nautobot, are users logging into the system manually running the jobs, or are you building APIs to run those jobs and having them call them with another maybe console to kick off those APIs?
Yeah, so all the jobs are written with API integrations directly, either through SSH connections when we first started. Obviously, the systems that only has CLI access, we were initially doing SSH connections, ping, things like that. Everything was run in the Nautobot interface via a job. So they could see the log output, they could see where it was going, and then we had certain failed conditions for every job to make sure that they could rerun it if they didn't pass it. So they were not logging into a lot of the end systems, and we let that to some of the higher end, or maybe troubleshooting. Maybe they've tried it a couple times. They escalated to the next tier, and they would go in and try and figure out why those steps aren't working, and then run it again.
And we also enabled some views in Nautobot to be accessed by users who weren't logged in. So again, the visibility page, if you're on our network, we want you to be able to have that visibility, limited, of course, by firewall rules to certain areas. But we want to enable that without slowing people down. We don't want somebody to log in. So certain views we opened up, but everything else was either triggered or logged in the system, depending on the user.
Yeah, you talked about doing upgrades to your Palo Alto firewalls with, I believe it was Celery, you said, which I'm not familiar with. Could you just talk about what that was paired with to accomplish that? Is it Python or Django?
Yeah. So the question was, using Celery to do the Palo Alto OS upgrades. Yes, we were using the Palo Alto Python SDK. So essentially, we created a mapping to know which operating systems needed to be run in, and also which hotfixes needed to be run, and which ones needed a restart. And so it would kind of go through a process and map through that and run. And we kick it off to Celery. Celery is just a asynchronous worker that runs on the side of Nautobot. And so it'll kick off, and it's checking in. We're constantly pinging the device, make sure it's up. If it is, check what version it is, make sure we actually completed the last step, and then it keeps going. And then they would just check in, the workers that would check in every so often, like, yep, it's still running, or, oh, we had a failure, maybe we need to replace the box and start over, whatever. We didn't know also what starting place we were gonna be. Sometimes we get a box from the vendor, and it would be on one version, another box would be on a different version. So this allowed us to kind of just start it, and it remediate itself to go and upgrade to the newest ones, install the Wildfire, all the antivirus, things like that.
And also intermediary versions. So Palo, you can't just usually direct jump to the latest version. We had to do a lot of intermediary versions, and the automation helped us do that.
Hey, right over here. About the business process, like during this automation journey, would you say it was kind of off to the side? Like, did it inform the process? Was it a detriment to the process? Did you have to change it at some point to maybe better influence the automation?
So business process as far as like the automation flow itself?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, again, we have a lot of non-IT individuals doing these automations. So yeah, we've had to definitely, again, I think one of the network guys said it in a workshop yesterday, embrace the failure. You're going to hit some road bumps, and you have to adapt, you have to change it, you have to understand who's running this thing, and you have to adapt fairly quickly. So if that's changing output, if that's giving them more validations, more guardrails, et cetera, yeah, we've had to do that a lot.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? Awesome.
I think we're good.
All right. Thank you guys so much for your time.
Thank you.
Stop. Don't go. Back up here. You're not getting off that easy. I'll go over here. So just a style point. You guys were very economical, kept way within your time limit. Is there any big messages, any slides that you left on the cutting room floor that you could get out in 3 minutes?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I think we had a lot of examples of the automations being run in the environment, what they look like, especially to the non-IT people. But I think those were the only ones we really cut.
Yeah, it was more of how to convey years and years of work in a short amount of time. I will say iterations, and that's the big thing. And we went back to the drawing board all the time. We said, okay, yes, this worked. You did exactly what you're supposed to, as a program does. But now we also needed to do this. And so it was always about changing it. And I mentioned item potency, to be able to go back and rerun that on the previous stores to make sure we're doing that. And then modularity was the big thing as well. Systems are going to change, and also we are not going to, when you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. So we're constantly adding new and new systems, more and more systems that they're adding in. And as the business upgrades to different external applications, we wanted to be able to plug those in right where the last one was without missing a beat. So Yeah, it's very well designed. I have to give the QT architects major props. They have a really well designed network. I loved working on all their stuff because it was very easy to understand and very easy to automate because they put in a lot of thought before we even got there. So,
And I think don't be afraid to change. Again, we've had several iterations of automation efforts: C# ASP.NET into Ansible, into Nautobot with Python. Who knows what we'll be in 5 years? We may stick with Nautobot, but I think Python and et cetera are here to stay. But 5 years that may change, so don't be afraid to change.
Last question from me, I promise. Knowing what you know now, would you have done anything different, or are you really eager to try something different for your next major initiative?
We're always excited to try new things. Our CEO says it best, doing hard things is what makes money. So moving forward and doing those complex things is really where we're at.
Cool. Well, thank you for enduring a little more grilling. Let's give it up. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
thank you.